Wow, we would have never believed this. You can listen to us on our podcast. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple, we're on Google. Go out there and listen to us when you're driving to work, or maybe when you're just sitting at home, or you're on the treadmill at the gym. Go on out there and listen to our podcast. So we're excited about it. We're glad you're excited about it too. Oh. It's interesting because she said sometimes she'd come home in a uniform with her gun on the side and start cooking up.
I said, and then she changes the gun for a spoon.
Well, I just said, well, that will stop Henry from coming home complaining about food. Hey, we're so glad you tuned in today for our episode with Muscle Matters, because muscles do matter, and there's matters that involve muscles. I'm here with Matt White, and Matt's been a co-host and host several times.
Yeah, no, it's been good to be back.
He's got such a radio voice. I get envious that, So
on the Tom Touchstone radio station.
Yeah, I can't even do that well. We're here with Shelley Castaneda. And Shelley was on our lunch break show. Hope you caught that. If you didn't, you need to, because she's an inspiration to me. And Shelley, I've known you for a long time.
Long time, yes.
Right. I think like you said, you came out of high school, you walked into Gold's Gym, and you had a interest in physical fitness coming out of high school. Were you participating in sports in high school?
Unsuccessfully, yes. I never really, nothing really stuck. I tried to go out for softball and, do a couple of things in high school, but I was never really an athlete.
But you're athletic, and your athletics has paid off. What drew you into the gym to make you have this, because you're still faithfully working out.
Yes.
I see you and the husband in the gym all the time. Obviously, it's working for you and him.
Right.
The couple goals right there, right?
Yeah. But it's so interesting to watch him because Henry goes one way and you go the other.
Yes.
So her husband's a power lifter, bodybuilder. Him and his brothers, they have a long history in town.
That's
cool.
And so it's really good. But what drew you into the gym?
Well, what actually happened is I got a job at Gold's Gym. I don't know if you remember, but I used to work the front counter. I used to make the smoothies for everybody and, check people in. So that was kind of my foot in the door. And then I started just making friends and meeting people that were hardcore into working out. And that just kind of got me more interested in it. So I started working out. Later on went to, a couple of bodybuilding competitions, and I really kind of got the bug from that point on. But
you got iron poisoning.
Iron poisoning, yes. Yeah, and then, just the fact that I was trying to get, hired somewhere in law enforcement, I knew it was important to be physically strong because I didn't have that size advantage.
Did you find out that it helped you?
Oh, absolutely. Especially when it came time to jump the 6-foot-tall wall. I mean, most females really struggle with that. And
I think I would struggle with it at any point in my history.
It's not only a physical task, but also a mental task too.
Yes,
it is. We have the saying, you hit the wall, right? Especially marathon runners. I have a lot of people that do a lot of marathons, and you hit that wall. But even then, it's daunting because they have that in the Spartan races and all the other.
Right.
And so people are like, that wall is always tough to do, especially if you got mud on you or any other kind of elements. So it can get kind of crazy. So, yeah.
And the wall probably came up after you're already tired, right?
Oh, absolutely.
That's I figured. It's always toward the back half, right?
Yeah. And, women tend to have a little more struggle with the upper body strength. So the whole pulling up, luckily I had that quad strength kind of got me over the wall pretty well. So.
You just have to get a toe hold or something like that, a boot hold. I like that. So has it helped you in that early phases of your what do they used to call it? I'm losing the word I'm looking for. Not a boot camp, but it's
the academy.
Academy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think on lunch break we talked about Bruce Fitzenreiter and the runner he was.
Yes.
And that you guys got punished. How was it that your class got punished?
Oh my gosh.
By Bruce.
Yeah. Well, he was just kind of a mean guy. I don't know.
I know.
Seemed like he got enjoyment out of making us throw up and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, he just had a couple of really good runners in our class that would nose up to him in the front. He always wanted to be in the front, right? So we had a couple guys that would right on him, and actually they would pass him sometimes. And he did not like that. So we all got to run stadiums or do something as a punishment.
Would you tackle the guy, or if they were trying to catch him if you were in the academy and you were getting punished?
I don't know about that, but there's always a little bit of fun challenging the authority figure, right? So you're like, oh, I can outdo you, but then you're going to pay for it later. So
Yeah.
I don't know, a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
I like that. So how did it pay off? Through you had 28 years, I believe, with the deputy sheriff.
I retired as a chief deputy.
Chief deputy, senior deputy. But then you went into up at the Batesville College, kind of overseeing their
The security department.
Yeah. So as you saw that the muscles mattered, and you were part of that. What was a part of your training regimen? Did you train at the sheriff's academy, or did you train? You still trained at the normal gyms, right?
Right. Yeah, I've always worked out at the gyms.
Yeah. But you did have a health facility available to you as a deputy sheriff, correct?
Yeah, we have a gym there at headquarters, sheriff's headquarters. So, I've utilized that gym through the years as well.
Yeah. Was it more of, hey, it's there, I'll use it, just getting off shift, or did you find more of maybe a push? I think as all of us were athletes, you kind of like the push. You come into a gym and you get that feeling. Was it the same at the sheriff academy as it was at the gym, or was there a difference?
Are you talking about the sheriff's gym?
Yeah, the sheriff's gym.
Yeah, I mean, I've used that occasionally. The only time probably I really used that with any consistency was my lunch hours as a chief deputy when I was in administration. A lot of times that's where I would go for lunch. I'd go work out, or at least get some cardio in. Yeah, because it was right down the hall and could do that. But I mean, prior to that, I've always regularly gone to the gym, my husband and I, and we used to be the 5 o'clockers going at 5 o'clock in the morning working out.
Wow.
Now it's 9 o'clock.
Now it's 9 o'clock.
I noticed that.
After coffee.
I've noticed that. If I get in there later, I get to enjoy seeing Henry and Shelley, and and they still work out just as hard. I don't anymore, but they do.
I think working out's just always been a part of my life.
Well, so as we're out there and we got some enthusiasts, hopefully some meatheads out there, when and I think it was important, something you said, when you were a senior deputy and you were working, you would catch it on your lunch hour to do some cardio, because you found, what was the mentality of that, Shelley? I mean, I know how I work it into my day, because working out is important to all of us. So what was the thought of that? Was it like it made my life better? It made my job better? It just...
Well, once I promoted to in administration, obviously there's a kind of a higher caliber, different kind of stress. You're dealing with budgets, you're dealing with personnel matters, you're dealing with, lawsuits, you're dealing with things that are really high stress things. And so for me, I think my goal became more shifted towards stress relief, which it was huge. Break up my day, go at lunchtime, work out, sweat a little bit, and then go back in, and it kind of refreshes you. So,
let's go into that. What did you find out that did you? What I did, and I read a book a long time ago. It's called, it says the body keeps score. Mm-hmm. So when something negative happens, you need to offset it with something positive. So in my profession, I have a lot of trauma in the profession I'm in with the ministry. And so if I did a funeral, let's say, it takes a piece of you, because you grieve for people that are hurting and losing a loved one. So on that day, after the funeral, I would work out. Mm-hmm. And it seemed to give me a balance, because I knew that working out would produce some endorphins, kind of energy. But for me, it was almost like an etch and sketch. I could go in with the weight of the world on my mind. I could exercise, and then it would be like, so what was I worried about? Did you have that experience, or what did you experience?
Yeah. I think it's definitely a time when you kind of just go in, and it's kind of about kind of escaping things for a little bit and just having that sole focus of, working out.
Yeah, even just going out on a walk, just being able to do that a couple times today. Because I think when you're working out and you're, like you said, get the endorphins going, you're moving, your mind isn't necessarily on all of the things. Mm-hmm. You're like, okay, I got to do one rep here, or I'm doing cardio. You kind of like let your mind kind of, I know Mike went out on a walk just right now. So he's just like doing shows all morning. And, that a little part can be that release that you need.
I'm stressing him out.
And I think Tom, because we're kind of on the other side now. Your reasoning and your goals changed a lot through the years. I mean, there was a point of time in the early 20s when my husband and I were competing in bodybuilding.
You guys were competitive
we had
and very good
different,
too.
very different goals at that point in time. And then, you know, as you get older, it's more like maintenance. It's trying to stay strong or stress relief. For me, I can tell you that maintaining the workout lifestyle my entire career, it helped me survive law enforcement, because when you're wearing a 25-pound gun belt, you know, every day getting in and out of a car, or you're sitting at a desk doing this all day, whatever it might be. I mean, it's so important to keep your body strong, and especially for females, you know, I think it's even more important because you're dealing with, you know, body, your bone density and strength and things like that. So.
Did you find that helped? I mean, was it more looking around saying, I think I'm doing better than that person because I'm exercising and they're not, I have energy, they don't? I mean, could you actually look around and say, this is productive for my career choice?
Absolutely. Physically, it was productive. Mentally, it was productive. I think one thing I can say, you know, looking back on it, you know, especially particularly in my competition years, it really taught me that mental discipline, that mental strength that carried me through a lot of trials in my career, you know. So I think that discipline that I learned with the dieting, the regimen, the working out, it carried me through so much during my career.
You hit a word that I think is lacking today, and I think it's discipline.
Yeah, I was ready to pull on that too.
Were you going to pull that trigger?
Yeah, I was like, oh, that word discipline, because a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to the gym. It's not necessarily what I'm doing at the gym, the workout that you're doing that day. It's just, hey, are you going? And you're going and working out. That discipline of just like, okay. And I have a good friend of mine. He just, the last couple of months, he's been consistent. I think he hit day or month 4 today, going to the gym every day. I'm like, wow. And it just doing that, and it leads into everything else in your life. So I know it sounds like you had something to add, Tom. On.
Well, no, I as I hear Shelley talk about it, it is that discipline that you can learn early on and carry it into something else. And I do believe, you know, athletics or physical fitness play such an important part in us as human beings, because I think we know that we technically live longer if we're exercising, eating right. You know, I know that as you bring down your stress level, the heart is an issue. And in your profession, I remember my brother used to tell me, and I've shared this before, that after 5 years on law enforcement, the state owns your heart because you've had enough stress in your life to make a significant impact on your arteries and veins. So it's like that. And, you know, I know in lunch break, Shelley and I talked about it, because as you went through your career, there were certain moments that you had stress.
No, absolutely.
You know, like you said, you know, when you were the senior deputy out at, was it McFarland? You were out there and a house alarm was going off. You're the only deputy there, and you had to go in to
clear a house.
But you didn't know there was anybody in there. Could you feel? I know that could be. Well, you don't know until you're in, right?
Yeah.
So the adrenaline. Tell me about that a little bit. The adrenaline dumps into your system. Do you feel it? Like your heart rate go up?
Absolutely, yeah. It's immediate. Yeah, it's that fight or flight thing that kicks in.
Yeah,
on you.
and you guys can't flight.
Right?
Yeah, and the Apple Watch is buzzing because your heart rate's above a certain amount, right? No, I get those alerts from home. I'm like, whoa, man, I'm really pushing it. So
yeah. So you know, and you may have how many of those events a day?
I mean, they're not every day, probably for an average patrol person, but it happens. Yeah. I mean, and there's different types of stress. I mean, you know, during my career, I've had many different assignments. I mean, I used to work homicide. I used to work, you know, sex crimes, child abuse. I mean, it's different kinds of stress when you have, you know, the responsibility of trying to see justice for a little child that's been molested or something like that. I mean, that weighs heavy on your heart too. It's not just the, you know, physical altercation scenarios that are stressful. It's those kinds of things where it's very important. It's very important you do your job well.
You want to be there to have a solution. And sometimes in those situations, it's finding a perpetrator, seeing them brought to justice, and seeing some justice done. But there again, you still have that child that has got an experience going on, and you carry the weight of that.
Absolutely.
You know, I there again, in your profession, I've never been there, but in our profession, I see it a lot of hurting people that may, you know, take a long time to recover.
Absolutely.
Like so, So as you left your competitive years, you know, and one thing I know about competitive athletes, because you had to eat a lot of meals,
A lot of cardio.
a lot of cardio, and did you find that you had to make a big adjustment as you came out? Well, the adjustment for me was the discipline was pushing back from the table.
Right.
Because I was used to eating so many calories a day that you didn't, it was almost like a ritual.
Yes.
You felt like you had to keep eating, and that wasn't good because you weren't doing
Yeah.
the calorie burn off like you was. Did that set into you guys? Or you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that definitely is a challenge, you know, just trying to get back to normal. And it's hard, you know, it's hard, but you can go so extreme in one direction, you can go just as extreme in that other direction. So again, it goes back to that discipline.
So
you
I'm going
know,
to go
and-
back there because I did leave bodybuilding with 2 eating disorders that's been diagnosed.
Oh, wow.
You know, and just because of the extreme going one way and going the other. And that was hard to do because I think it takes an extreme personality to rise at levels. And you know, there again, you threw the discus.
shot put.
Yeah. And so when you go to that high level in college or, you know, in just in athletics competitive, sometimes, you know, it's almost a high that you have to come down off of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you said, you would have those competitive seasons that sometimes maybe 2 shows a year, you know, that you prepare up to, and then you kind of come back down to earth, and we would call it bulking up.
Right?
Yeah.
The off season.
No tight stuff, just sweats.
Right.
And those don't benefit you, you know, after the competitive years are over.
No.
You know, they hurt you more than anything. And I always tell young people now, the best advice I can give to Matt White, young Matt White, is to stay in shape. Don't get out of shape.
Yeah,
Right,
I have a friend of
exactly.
mine. Yeah, when he's hitting his older age. I'm like, hey, you want to go and like do some Olympic lifts? And he goes, nah, I've had my time. But because I do a HIIT class weekly, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you know, if I can make it. And he goes, yeah. He goes, man, if you can keep doing this, that's the best advice for you. He goes, being, you know, of course, twice my age. And he goes, yeah, if you do this, stay in shape, you'll be good for life.
Yeah.
So
And you're like, no, I want to lift the heavy stuff.
I know. I want to go do
Yeah.
deadlifts and power cleans and all that stuff.
I think you learn as you get older too that you can't operate at that extreme.
Exactly.
I don't know if you saw that recent documentary on Ronnie Coleman
Yes, I did.
where you see like all that pounding of those weights over the years. He's had like 8 back surgeries, a neck surgery. The guy can't really walk without, you know, crutches. And it's just like you have to get smart. And I know for me now, I've learned to listen to my body. Whereas before I used to just try to power through anything, you know.
Yeah,
like-
and I think they call it instinctive training.
correct.
You have to listen to yourself. And I think that would have been good for us when we were younger too.
yeah.
One of the things I never got a chance to know Ronnie or compete with Ronnie. He was a pup when I retired.
Yeah.
And you know, out of all the Mr. Olympias you win, there's a price you pay. And I don't think that ever price goes away because there is a negative side of this.
Right.
You know, fitness looks great if you don't take care of your body and you don't wear the right equipment, because a lot of us deal with backs and knees and elbows. You may not, but I'm sure Henry does. You know, it is. It's one of those
Yeah.
things that you deal with. And, you know, what's that song? If the older self could go back and talk to the younger self, I'd say don't squat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't squat. You know, but that'd be hard to tell a younger person because I'm sure you get that advice all the time. So what
yeah.
should I do? You tell them, well, just, you know,
Yeah.
avoid extremes, and they want extremes because they're young.
Yeah.
You can abuse your
Absolutely.
body young, and there's a little bit of grace that you don't pay for until you get older.
Right. Exactly.
I think you said it right on the money when you were talking about earlier. Your kind of goals kind of adjust. For you're like, okay, I'm staying in shape, so you're like, I don't need to go in and do the same amount of workouts that I was doing. Like for me, being a college athlete, it was like we're doing bench press, squat, deadlift, all in the same day.
Right.
And I was like, man, I can't do that anymore. I was like, I realized I'm like, I could go do that, but you know, my body's gonna feel it. But I'm like, also, I'm not competing. I'm not
Right.
going out and doing
Right.
it. I'm not eating the right meals for that competition mindset. Because I've tried to be like doing that recently, and I'm like, man, it used to be so easy. Come in, hit the 3 workouts, your main lifts, and we were only lifting 2-3 times a week, but it was always heavy, and it's like 2-3 hours that day, and then you rest for a day, come back, do it again, rest until the next week, and you're throwing in between. And I'm like, man, I used to be in such great shape. So I think you had it right on the money when you said, oh, your goals do adjust as you get older.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
nobody ever tells you that. A lot of people consume social media. They're like, oh, I see these guys lifting these heavy weights. I need to go and do that.
Right.
And then that's when these kids go out and get hurt, or they're already, like you said, setting themselves up for later in life. And I think it's a little easier with social media, I guess, now to kind of like,
exactly.
yeah, because like, I want to be like Tom Touchstone was, back in the day, and so.
No, but and back to what I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Back to what I mentioned on the other segment about the breast cancer journey that I had. I continued to work out during that time, even though I couldn't do what I was used to doing. My mindset was, even if I just do a little bit, I'll keep it going. And so, believe it or not, I shared the story about losing my hair, and I was wearing wigs. Well, I actually bought a wig that basically is just hair around the back and it has a cap on the front.
You didn't, Shelley.
I called it my Ben Franklin.
So
I would go to the gym at lunchtime at the sheriff's gym, and I would put that cap on, and it just looked like a ponytail coming out of the back of a lady's cap, and I would put that on, and I would go to the gym and I would work out.
How creative!
Yeah.
Wow.
Does anybody else know that story?
I don't know.
Does.
People did not know that I had lost my hair. They didn't even know I was wearing. I had people go, "Oh, your hair looks so good. What did you do? Did you cut it?" I was like, "Yeah."
Real short.
But
My
I mean,
husband did that.
I think that just the working out and staying as active as I could. Again, it goes back to help me mentally to get through what I was dealing with the treatment. So.
Well, there's a point of, and I think this is good to talk about, is that it becomes part of our identity. Mm-hmm. Like you and Matt and I, we've got iron poisoning. We like to lift weights, and like I do not lift a lot of free weights anymore. I push the machines, but it's lifting resistance. But as you do it, there's this identity that's in it. Like you said, I may not have, my ultimate health right now, but I can actually still stimulate my muscle tissue. I can get my endorphins going. So it makes you kind of have that feeling like I am progressing. Right. I am still doing it. And I think some people always think if I can't go to the gym for an hour and a half, or I won't go at all. 20 minutes do great if that's all you have.
I did that this week with my brother, and it's nice to just be able to, like you said, reset. And even during the pandemic, I bought those like resistance bands.
Yeah.
And I was watching some YouTube guys, and I was like, this isn't going to work, I'm not going to be tired. And man, after 25, 30 minutes, boom. And I was like, whoa. And I started seeing results from that. I'm like, this is just a band exercise. Like, really? I'm over here like this. And you could add the resistance and stuff. And
what did you and Henry do during the pandemic? Would you guys work out in your house or?
Yeah, that's pretty much. We were doing a lot of bike riding. We would, ride our bikes out on the bike trail and just, stretching and doing band work and, a little bit of dumbbell stuff. I mean, yeah, we just did what we could do,
I made a mistake because my son-in-law now, Danny, you've met Danny.
Yeah.
I have some equipment at my house, and he would come over and we'd work out. And I was limping around. He was limping around. Of course, he's like 19. And my wife goes, so when are you just going to stop this? And I go, I'm not going to stop it. She goes, no. I mean, you guys are competing. He's limping, you're limping. And I was like, oh, it's the alpha male thing. But it was funny how we would do that just in our house.
Yeah.
The intensity didn't have to stop because it's up here.
Right.
It was just a moment where one day we're working out. I go, hey, I'm getting in trouble for my wife that we're competing so much, so we got to slow this thing back. And I think we are both grateful, but I think that's letting me think that, because I think he was okay. I don't think he was hurt like I was. And at 19, I don't know. But I'm just saying that there is that intensity that comes from working out.
Yes.
And there's an intensity when you leave something like competitive bodybuilding that you and Henry did at a high level, where you have to adapt back into, I'm okay doing that. Mm-hmm. I'm okay just, and if you say, and if you don't know the difference between working out double splits a couple hours a day to just working out once a day for 60 minutes, it's a big difference. It's an experience.
Yeah, and a lot of people are being socially conditioned to kind of stay at home, stay in your own bubble, and just stay on your phone and all these distractions. And it's like, man, I don't know how many people told me, oh, I can't go to the gym. But I'm like, I know you're on social media like half the day you're watching Netflix, and I think just the way, and then don't get me started on the food, the food that's out there and just the stuff and the additives. I know seed oils is becoming kind of mainstream. Have you guys heard about that at all?
No, I have not. Have you, Shelley?
Yeah. So a lot of the food, so seed oils, like the high processed, like vegetable oils that are put in our foods, I didn't even realize, but that stays in your fat tissue for up to 4 years in your system, and it comes in like all shapes and forms.
That's the
yeah, there we go. That's the reason. Okay. Yeah, so it's been interesting to kind of do some more research into the nutrition side, and I'm like, I don't know how that was necessarily for law enforcement. If you want to mind me asking in terms of like the diet on terms of that, because we've heard a lot about the workout, but I'm kind of curious on what the day-to-day was for that.
During competition times, you mean?
Well, not competition, but yeah, we can maybe do a competition.
Well,
but also...
honestly, I'll refine that search a little more.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, I'm like, I'm going to pull on that.
So when you're on duty, and sometimes you're pulling a 10 or 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How do you keep your nutrition up?
It's challenging. I mean, I can't say I've always ate clean, at all times, but for the most part, just bringing your own meals ahead of time and avoiding the fast food, and shift work makes it hard too, because when you're upside down on when you should be eating and sleeping and all
your
that.
Your body knows, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. So that's very challenging, but just trying to be consistent. I've always tried to be reasonable with my diet. I don't always, obviously, I'm not like a bodybuilder diet or anything, but I try to eat as clean as possible.
Yeah. No, I just was thinking about that because I was like, oh yeah, because like with the working out and then what's being put out and what's being pushed in the mainstream. We were talking right before the show started. They're like, man, they're saying that Frosted Flakes are healthier than chicken breast now from the government. So we were like, I was just like, man, that's kind of odd. So yeah,
depending on who does the survey, right?
I know, right? Exactly. So because I was thinking 10 to 12-hour shifts. Sometimes you don't have time to eat, and sometimes you never know the situations that are going to come up during the day, and
Absolutely.
It can be a mix.
Well, as we all know, nutrition is important. It's the fuel, like the gas that you put in the car. I think you perform better on better nutrition than not. But I think on a 12, 10-hour shift, you're going to have to, choose to eat healthier. Mm-hmm. And this is the thing, Shelley, because you and I grew up in a time where, and I know that Henry and I are probably advanced in age a little more than you. But I mean, I know Henry and I grew up in the era where the only supplement for protein was liver tablets. Mm-hmm. Do you remember liver tablets? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And they weren't good. I mean, they were good in the form of that was a alternative to chewing steak or chicken. But you could take it, but you would have to take 25, 30 at a time. Yeah. But it was a supplement. It was it was not the PED of the day, but it was some way to get protein in your system without having to chew a steak, so you could intermittently go on that. So as supplements become more important, you start to have more choices nowadays. I mean, it's great for me to go to El Pollo Loco and get a keto burrito.
Right. Yeah, it makes it easier.
But that's something nowadays you didn't have that.
Right.
Exactly.
It's probably the old Taco Bell and the fast food, but just had to make a better choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the danger is, you kind of touched on it, is like everybody's like instant gratification. They just want every little supplement or magic pill is going to make me in shape. And, for me, and I think, my husband and I both have kind of stick with the basics. I mean, it's pretty easy. I mean, it's to eat clean, and it's not rocket scientists. It's just a matter of making good choices. And there's so much crap out there that they're pushing on people to buy. That's, like you said, it's worse than what you're trying to avoid.
Yeah. I'm very interested in the new one. Order your pre-mixed meal. They'll send it to your house and you cook it. I'm like, all they did was help me not go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I still cut it up. My wife did it for, I think we did it for like 2 months, and I'm like going, I could cut out the middleman.
Right.
Real simple, but it is simplicity. Talk about you being a gourmet chef.
Oh, I didn't even know this.
Yeah. Well, wow. It's interesting because she said sometimes she'd come home in a uniform with her gun on the side and start cooking up.
And then she changes the gun for a spoon.
Well, I just said, that will stop Henry from coming home complaining about food. But she was a gourmet chef. So what got you into that?
I don't know because I was never raised. I mean, I didn't learn cooking from my mother or anything like that. I think I just always had an interest in it. So when I first got married, of course, you want to be the best homemaker and wife and everything. So I started getting a lot of cookbooks and things. And I have to tell you, I was self-taught. So I just started trying recipes and, getting a little more advanced what I was making. And we've done quite a bit of traveling. So I tend to like the Mediterranean food or Asian
so
food,
good.
Thai food. Stir fries, that kind of thing. And so I don't know, just always enjoyed. I love to bake. Like I love baking cakes. I've baked a cake every single year for my husband and my kids, and it's just something I enjoy. And that's another one of those little stress relievers. I guess it's a hobby in a way.
Yeah. So, what would be one of your best dishes? You would say maybe the Mediterranean type diet. I love Mediterranean food. So, what would be your, I guess, favorite dish to make that you enjoy?
What comes to mind, not necessarily Mediterranean, but I do a chicken piccata. That's kind of like a favorite for everybody. I do a lot of Thai soups, like the coconut milk Thai soups, or I do pozole, which is a Mexican dish, pork
Pozole,
dish.
yeah.
And
My daughter just learned how to cook that for her
Oh,
husband.
that's excellent. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean,
That's cool.
those are some of the ones that I
Do,
tend
do
to make
you
a lot
do you
of.
find yourself looking for healthier choices?
I do, and in fact, I've tried to dabble a little bit with the vegetarian stuff and the vegan, but that's so much more challenging to
Is
try
it?
to do.
Why is that, Shelley?
Well, I mean, you're just limited on ingredients. My latest kick has been the monk fruit thing, taking sugar
yeah.
out and using monk fruit and almond flour and
Does
things.
it work?
It works, but it's not quite as tasty.
Really?
I mean,
Yeah, it has
it's
like
a little
it has
harder
a different
to get used
taste
to.
than you. Yeah, because I know stevia is another alternative. But
Yeah.
monk fruit is like supposed to be even sweeter.
Yeah,
but
it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, so it's sticky though, and I've used it to cook and stuff. It's like man, you get any of that on you, you're like, oh man.
Yeah, so I mean, it just try to be consistent. Eat, veggies. I always have a big serving of veggies or salad. I make my own salad dressings. I try to avoid stuff that's got additives and artificial stuff in it.
Yeah, and it's easy just looking on the bottle because you'd be surprised even in salad dressings, peanut butter, jelly, the high fructose corn syrup, which always tripped me out. So I was at the grocery store recently, and so you have your big Skippy peanut butter that everybody gets, right? It's crunchy or smooth. You have the two. But then just to the left, two levels down is natural Skippy peanut butter.
Right.
It's literally the same thing without high fructose corn syrup.
Right.
And I'm like, whoa, gee whiz, they're selling a healthy alternative, but they're mass marketing everything else.
Right.
Which everybody's like, man, I'm going to eat this peanut butter as you're and it stays on the stomach, and you're like, oh my goodness, I've been eating it for years, and I just switched over recently. I want the peanut and the oil. That's it.
Right.
And call it a day. So
I'm learning today, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing I hope, and I think maybe you have something to say about this. The older you get, you never stop learning.
No, absolutely not.
This you're telling me stuff. I'm like going, maybe there's hope.
no,
There's
there you
always
go,
hope.
Tom. Yeah.
It's more challenging as you get older too.
Shelley, jumping back into the experience with cancer, did you find being in shape while you're going into that and then staying healthy helped you mentally, physically? Because I know, and then I go, we haven't even touched the spiritual side of it yet. But did you find that be a help? I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mentally and physically, it kept me stronger, and it definitely helped me to recuperate a lot quicker and tolerate, the treatments.
yeah, because it's my wife had her colon removed 19 years ago, and the surgeon came out and said, I was glad your wife was in shape because everything was where I was supposed to be. And I was like, well, that's important. He goes, no, it is.
Yeah.
And so it was like there is a benefit, and for that, if you have to go into surgery or treatment, is to say going into it, because you never know when that's going to happen in life.
Yeah.
So it's good to stay in some type of shape because it does help.
Yeah, and it keeps you, I think because I was mentally tough, although my faith obviously was the biggest factor in getting through what I did, but being mentally tough and having that discipline and trying to keep up with the regimen as much as I could, it keeps you going and keeps you feeling strong. I've seen, some folks that go through the cancer journey and they just kind of roll over like, oh, this is it, woe is me, and I'm not saying it's not a hard thing because it's an incredibly hard thing, but it goes back to mindset. I'm going to overcome this. I'm going to get through it. I'm going to keep working out and being strong. And then, I deal with the byproducts now of like I have osteoporosis because the chemo just pretty much wiped out my calcium and all that I have to deal with now, but it's small price to pay in my
Well,
opinion.
it is and my wife will go through some of that because of her health issues, and she'll say it's not like women don't have that already. Getting older, it's like now we have something that has been depleted from our system,
Right.
Or that the medications you take or any of that still, drain that. And, my wife takes a supplement and she takes an injection once a year to help her with the osteoporosis.
Yeah.
And that's something that never ends too. So if you were out there and you're talking to a younger person out there, what would be the advice being competitive as a bodybuilder, being successful as a senior deputy, moving into a point where you're enjoying some things now with your husband? What would you tell a younger person just to implement into their life?
It goes back to what I said before. It's a balance of priorities and having balance in your life on the things that you're involved with. There should never be one thing that takes the overwhelming priority of your life. I mean, your career you shouldn't eat, breathe, and sleep your job. That's not healthy. That's when you start having stress. That's when you start having heart attacks and drinking and those kinds of things. So it goes back. I have my faith. I spend time in the Word. I go to church. I work out because that keeps me physically and mentally strong. I spend time with my family. I enjoy other things outside of what I normally do. I travel. I think it's just, my advice would be just always strive to have that balance, and that's really going to get you through.
And when you're young, Matt, you don't want to have balance, right?
Well, actually, no, I would say 100%. I agree
I'm just
with
saying,
her.
but a lot of young
when you're
people,
young, and we want to kind of work, and you're trying to work on your career, and with my like past experience being in politics, I let politics run every single thing in my life. Didn't have any social life, and honestly, the last 6 months has been really refreshing, and my relationship with God has been restored through this whole journey this past year. Because I realized I didn't realize, but through the work, I changed out God for politics, and I was like, oh my goodness, I need to refocus on my priorities. And now, okay, family time is important. Being in the Word is important, because if you're not serving God, you're serving something else,
Right.
and that the ends of that ends up where it ends, and it's not usually a good thing. So
It's easy for other things to be our idols. And that includes working out, and includes politics.
Oh,
Either way.
you hit a touchy subject, right?
Yeah, right on it.
We've all. I could say it's one of those things that will almost honestly, and there again, I've been working out 54 years, which is crazy. It will try to monopolize your life at different levels of your life. And I can say that being 64, it will still combat for that top role. Because and I don't know if it's identity with what we did, or at the high level of what you did it at, or it's just part of who you are. But you always have to make sure. I think, Shelley, what you said, having the Lord first, then your time with Him included that, then your spouse, and your family, and then your career and job. And some people get that topsy-turvy so easy. Yeah. Shelley, you got the last word. What would you like to say?
Oh, just thank you for having me.
Oh, you're an honor. There again, we are going to have Shelley back on Ministry Matters. So hopefully you're watching her lunch break. You'll see the Muscle Matters and Ministry Matters, because I do believe it's an amazing thing where you can get somebody that can get the whole package together and implement it. And those are things that we need in this day and age.
Yeah, well, I'm in work in progress. So.
Well, I think that's the humility that you brought to your job, rising to the top level in your profession, also fitness, and also your personal life too, where you've found value in your husband and your relationship together. And I love that. So, Shelley, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt, for sitting in for me, and for Mike, and thank you for watching. So we're going to thank all of our supporters. We got Mike Harvey, who's our he's everything, right?
Yeah, 511 Media Group.
Yeah, 511 Media Group. He's a producer.
I know all the teams. Got Alex in the back.
Yeah, Alex and Nathaniel and Joanna, and of course you. And we have Tessa and Taylor as our consultants. We have many co-hosts and hostesses. So there again, thank you guys for tuning in and watching, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.
God bless.